What's up, gang? It's your local real estate expert, Sarb Sold It, back with another video. This time we're gonna talk about a question I hear from everyone. How do people keep affording these homes? Some of these homes are 1.5, 1.6, all the way up to $2 million. How can people afford them? I just don't get it. Well, I'm gonna answer that question for you guys. So, what people don't understand is there's levels to the game. A majority of individuals who can afford these homes that are above 1.5 million obviously don't just start off living at their parents' place, start off renting, and then magically get to, home ownership. It's not the 80s anymore, where homes are less than $200,000 and you're making 30, 40 grand a year, so it only takes you about 3 years to save up for a down payment to buy a home. I mean, wages are relatively still the same. Maybe the median average has gone up to about 55 to 60K, but homes are, 10x, 20x above what the 150 to 200 range was. I don't know if that math checks out. One of you guys will probably comment that it doesn't. But what I'm trying to say is they're like above 1.5 million now for a standard like 4-bedroom home with a suite. Majority of people, they start off with something small. This is the first level of the game. This is why you hear realtors say, just get yourself into the market. Even if it's not a property that checks off all your boxes, checks off all your criteria, it might not be in amazing condition. And you know what? It might not be in the best location either. Just get yourself into something so you can start building equity, and then you can, in the future, use that equity as leverage to put down a down payment on a bigger property. Reverting back to equity. What is that? The equity in a home is basically the difference between what your home's value is and how much you owe on the mortgage. So let's say your first property. You got yourself into a $400,000 one-bedroom apartment in Richmond. And let's say you lived in it for at least 3 years. So you put maybe 20% down, that's like 50 grand. So you have a $350,000 loan. Again, I don't know if that math is correct. I'm just kind of throwing numbers at you. We'll call it 50 grand. So you have a $350,000 mortgage. Over time, that property that was $400,000 has now maybe increased to about 470, 480. Let's call it 480. And in those 3 years, you've also paid off some of your principal on your mortgage. Let's say you've paid off 20 grand. So you're down to like 330. So the 480 minus the 330, it's $150,000. That is equity built up in your home just from living there for 3 years. Now what you can do is you can pull that equity out and use it as a down payment for something bigger. Maybe a 2-bedroom apartment, maybe a 3-bedroom, maybe a townhome. But it gives you options to use that equity that you built up over that time and put it on a bigger property. And that's level 2. As you work through these levels, you're going from a smaller property, an older property, to something slightly newer and slightly bigger, and you're doing this over a course of maybe 15 years. Obviously, if you time the market perfectly, it can be done a little bit sooner. In the long term, real estate goes up. Everybody knows that. But there are times, for example, 2008, 2017, and more recently in 2022, when interest rates spiked, when there was an economic downturn, where if you were holding real estate, it might have been harder to make those payments, and also the property value goes down. And if you try and sell in those times, yes, it's gonna hurt the amount of equity that you're able to take out, and of course, what you can eventually buy because you won't qualify for more. However, most of the time, you can time the market perfectly, in most cases, to sell that property when it's most advantageous for you, pull out that equity, and use it for a bigger property. This was a very long-winded way of saying that people that can afford properties that are 1.5 million started off with something small, usually, lived in it for a few years, built up that equity, bought something bigger, did the same thing for 3, 4, maybe 5 years, and then bought something bigger until they eventually got to the home. So that's how these people are affording these homes. And like I said, this is why you hear realtors say, just get into the market as soon as you can. It's always a good time to buy real estate, because you buy real estate, you're not buying it to flip it immediately unless you're a seasoned investor and you know what you're doing. You're supposed to buy it and then wait. Buy real estate and then wait, because over time it will grow. And as it grows, you can use it as leverage to buy yourself into a bigger property. Now, when I got this question, I answered it for a client. What they essentially said to me was, well, then you're kind of stuck on the never-ending cycle of the mortgage train. I'm like, that's kind of true and kind of not true. In a sense, well, you can jump off that train at any point. If you find your forever home, let's say you started off at a 1-bedroom, lived in it for 4 years, got into a 2-bedroom, and then eventually you got, let's say, into a 2-bedroom and den condo that you really like and you love, and that's your forever home. You don't need a townhome, you don't need a detached home in the future. Well, then you can just pay down that condo and essentially live in it for free once you've paid it off. Obviously, you have to pay strata after that, but of course, you're not paying a mortgage after that. Or you could sell that and downsize into something smaller in the future because you don't need that much space. And look at that, you made a little bit of money in between, and you can live in the smaller space that doesn't require a mortgage payment. You don't have to keep making these moves to get to a bigger property. I mean, it's just what most people want to do because they want a detached home at the end of the day. So that's one way to kind of get off the mortgage cycle. Another way is being on the mortgage cycle is a lot better than being on the renting train. I mean, one you can use to leverage, and the other one you're just paying somebody else's mortgage. Obviously, you have to be smart when you go the route of having a mortgage rather than renting, which is pretty simple. You're just paying someone for a place to stay. But mortgages come with their own responsibilities. And that's something I'll cover in another video. I hope that answered the question as to why some people are able to afford these homes. People like you and me who may make like, I'm not gonna say like me, who make $60,000 to $70,000 a year. The median population that makes anywhere from 50 to 70 grand a year. How can they, as two individuals, afford these larger homes? When I'm doing the same thing they did, I can't afford that same home, or I can't get qualified for a loan to get that home, or I can't save for the down payment. This is what they did. They played the levels of the game. They got into something smaller that they didn't like 100% and then built their way up. Meanwhile, most individuals who do most of the complaining or ask questions like this, they've just been renting the whole time. So anyways, I hope that clears it up, guys. This has been your realtor, Sarb Grewal. Sarb sold it. Yeah, boy. Signing off. See you in the next one.